Tier 3, The Lawn. Plants vs. Zombies 3D Ancient Egypt, otherwise known as Plants vs. Zombies 3D Video Slot, is a video slot machine based off of the Ancient Egypt world in Plants vs. Zombies 2. It has 3D versions of the zombies and plants from Plants vs. Zombies 2 that look kind of weird, and it's oddly complex with how many different rewards, bonuses, and mechanics there are. Nut allergy death. In the console editions of the game, there's a very rare occurrence that zombies can die after getting near a walnut. Originally, I thought this was just a joke or a fan animation that someone made, but no, this is actually on the console versions. Michael Jackson Zombie. The original Dancing Zombie was completely based off of Michael Jackson from the Thriller music video. And, well, in the description it says, "Any resemblance between Dancing Zombie and persons living or dead is purely coincidental." Unfortunately, a month or so after the game released, Michael Jackson died and his family requested him to be removed from the game. And now we have Disco Zombie, which I would say is a good replacement. Plants vs. Zombies movie. There was a Plants vs. Zombies movie being made by DreamWorks a while back, but was unfortunately left on the cutting room floor. We don't know a whole lot about it, but we do have some concept art for what it would have looked like these being shown here. Who knows, maybe with all the video game adaptations to shows and movies we're getting, we might get this someday. Crazy Dave is the last person on Earth. The theory goes that all the zombies led by Dr. Zomboss ate probably every human on Earth. This is suggested by the fact that there is no other human to be seen in any of the 3 main Plants vs. Zombies games, aside from 3, but we'll talk about that in a later entry. And many of the zombies themselves were probably former humans, with one exception, a man named Dave. Because Dave knew he was the only human left, his mind left him and went insane, which would explain why he thought the only way to stop zombies was with plants. This was proven untrue with the 3rd game. You know, we have Patrice. And I do like things from the comics being in the games, like Patrice and some other characters, but I think this would have been a really good way to kind of run the franchise with it just being Dave, and the story being oddly dark if you think a little bit too much into it. The blood on the bucket zombie is actually paint. So you guys probably remember the Buckethead zombie from the 1st game and how there was blood on his head. Actually, no, this isn't blood at all. It was revealed through some concept art that this guy was actually meant to be a painter zombie, hence the red liquid on his bucket. It's weird that this wasn't stated more publicly somewhere, considering the games are targeted for kids mainly, but, you know, it makes for a good entry on the Iceberg. And I really want to see this painter zombie hopefully return someday. Garlic is married? According to Garlic's almanac entry in Plants vs. Zombies 1, he had a wife. Lane diversion isn't just Garlic's profession, it's his passion. He carries an advanced doctorate in redirection from the Brussels University. He'll talk all day about lane vectors and repulse arrays. He even pushes things into alternate avenues at home. Somehow his wife puts up with it. At least from my knowledge, this is the only plant to have a public relationship, and even though it's probably just a joke by the developers, I like to think that a lot of plants and zombies have super complex relationships. Walnuts can't feel pain. People wonder how I feel about getting constantly chewed on by zombies, says Walnut. What they don't realize is that with my limited senses, all I can feel is a kind of tingling, like a relaxing back rub. So I guess don't worry about any walnut or tall nut you place down because they don't care. It kind of feels relaxing to them. Plants vs. Zombies manga, or what the Iceberg linked to is Chinese Plants vs. Zombies books. It's hard finding a whole lot of information on these because, well, it's all in Chinese. But yeah, there's so many Chinese Plants vs. Zombies books, like way more than you would think. They all look like pretty basic kids books, but it's Plants vs. Zombies, and with all these books, they have so much more than we have over here. Pop Smarts. Quick entry, but in the comics, Zomboss eats the zombie version of Pop-Tarts, called Pop Smarts. Plants vs. Zombies KFC buckets. There was a KFC and Plants vs. Zombies collab that happened in 2012, and the wild thing about it, aside from these 2 companies doing anything with each other, is that I can't find a single listing for any of these buckets or cups from this collab anywhere. there's some weird Plants vs. Zombies merch I can find, like the pea shooter stylus, that's no problem. But I've searched all over eBay, all over AliExpress, I can't find anything, so I think that these might be some of the more rare merchandise in the whole franchise. Unicorn Chomper. The Unicorn Chomper is a variant of the Chomper that you could only get if you got max rank in the original Garden Warfare and imported your characters to Garden Warfare 2 before a certain date. Because of this, it's super rare that you'll find anyone who legitimately got these. The Chomper also had a special ability called Rainbow Warp, where he would teleport like a scientist instead of burrowing under the ground like a normal Chomper. Iceberg Lettuce was supposed to be a character in Battle for Neighborville. So Iceberg Lettuce was a very close to complete class in Battle for Neighborville, but never saw the light of day. There's footage of people playing the character like this. It just sucks because the character was so close to completion and had so many abilities and a full model done, it just never got added to the game. Original Gargantuar designs. This entry is about the original scrap designs for the Gargantuar. It was originally going to not be as scary, but still pretty disturbing. You can see how these designs were close to what we got in the final product, but not exactly. There's also weird variations, like for the social edition of the game, there is the Encourager Gargantuar. We'll talk about how many other variations that the Chinese version of Plants vs. Zombies gets later. But yeah, there was a good chance that the Gargantuar could have looked like this guy in some white underwear and very, very disturbing looking. Wild West was supposed to be a farm. In the Art of Plants vs. Zombies book, mentioned in the last tier, it's shown that the Wild West from Plants vs. Zombies 2 was originally going to be a farm. And this concept art was pretty well thought out. There was a lot of different designs and items, and a tractor that they would even use. And I would love to see these levels and zombies brought back in a future game, but with how Plants vs. Zombies 3 is going, not so sure if we'll get much variation anytime soon. Original Plants vs. Zombies 2 map design. When Plants vs. Zombies 2 released, the maps, well, they looked much better. The level and design of menus gradually got a bit easier, not that the levels were easy or anything. But these old maps, some people thought were harder, and I really prefer the old way of showing all the levels. The new way is still cool, but it feels simplified and dumbed down when we had this amazing art before. Corn in real life, not clickbait. Yeah, there was an ad for Garden Warfare 2 featuring a live-action Colonel Corn. Not knowing that this was a later entry, I had it as background video in the last tier. But yeah, there he is, the Colonel himself in real life. PopCap and EA used to be so much more creative with how they'd advertise things, and I really just want to see some of that creativity come back. Plants vs. Zombies Pinball. In Zen Pinball 2, there is a Plants vs. Zombies pinball machine. It's shockingly well made, like everything Plants vs. Zombies, and I gotta admit, while looking up footage for this game, I just got hooked and watched like 15 minutes of gameplay for it. It has a lot of the normal zombies and different references to the different games. It even has a Crazy Dave car that drives out and stuff. It looks really good. And for the final entry in this tier, the Brain Bucket. The Brain Bucket was an exclusive item for Team Fortress 2 that you could only obtain if you got Plants vs. Zombies on Steam before May 5th, 2011. I could find about 200 or so in circulation on the Steam market, ranging from less than $1 to $72. And this time I can't tell if it's the Plants vs. Zombies fans or Team Fortress fans going crazy with price. I think this is such a cool way to advertise a game on Steam, and I hope they do it for more games in the future. Tier 4, the pool. Crazy Dave created the zombies using fog. In Plants vs. Zombies 1, the loading screen has zombies coming out of a purple fog, and in Plants vs. Zombies Adventures, to advance, you have to clear purple fog where zombies appear from. The reason people think Crazy Dave made the fog is that he used to be called the Fog Man. He would hide in fog and scare people by jumping out, but some people think it has a deeper meaning. I don't think Dave has the mental capacity to really create zombies from fog, or maybe that's the thing that made him crazy. So I don't know. It's a cool theory nonetheless, and the future theories in this iceberg get even more interesting. Limited editions. Now I've talked about the DS edition for Plants vs. Zombies and how there's a really goofy, but in my opinion, amazing looking pea shooter stylus. But what I didn't know is that for the DS version, there's also a Yeti edition that contains a toy Plants vs. Zombies Yeti. And I couldn't find this thing anywhere. Even just researching on it, there wasn't very much information, but certainly not for any shopping methods. I checked eBay, Google Store. There is nothing I could find selling this little Yeti toy. And that's because, well, any limited editions, especially that contained things like this, were sold much less. There wasn't as much room on shelves for it, and not as many people would go out of their way to buy them. But I think it's really cool when companies do things like this. Plasma Pea was based off of the night sky. The winner of the contest for the new plant variant that turned into the iconic Plasma Pea we all know and love said that the original design was actually based off of the night sky. And they do actually like the Plasma Pea more, but since they didn't name it, PopCap had to give it a name, so they just went ahead and named it Plasma Pea and went from there. Talking Zombatar. Talking Zombatar was a cancelled virtual pet game. The player could dress up their zombie, train them to dance, shoot videos with them, earn different daily rewards, and even take pictures with them. They were also going to repeat everything the player said. This game was scrapped for an unknown reason and never got released to the public. However, there is a trailer for it. Plants vs. Zombies Web Edition. Plants vs. Zombies Web Edition was basically a free trial version of Plants vs. Zombies in Adobe Flash on the PopCap website. The game wouldn't let you progress past level 2-4, but it did have a survival and puzzle mode as well. And if someone unlocked survival and puzzle modes on their computer already, they would be able to continue playing through these modes on the Flash version. Survival mode on the web version is a modified version of Survival Endless, which takes place during the night, and the player can only choose 4 plants at a time. And puzzle mode consists of a modified version of Icebreaker, and the player's progress would be lost on survival and puzzle modes if you quit the game at all. Burger King Toys. This is very similar to the KFC entry, where it's just another collab with a food place, but this time it was Burger King. There were different buckets that had comic strips on them and stickers you could collect, plus even some masks, wristbands, and a small game that you could play. Not a whole lot of fast food places that do collabs with any franchise go this far. This one just was a bit crazy with how much they decided to do. Bill Nye commercial. As a commercial for the Origins Access subscription, EA decided to get Bill Nye himself to talk about Garden Warfare 2 and how you could play it early. Aside from EA basically just flexing how much money they have, it's really funny seeing Bill Nye talk about anything Plants vs. Zombies related. Hairy Zombie Plush. This plush is apparently extremely rare and near impossible to find. The design of the zombie doesn't appear in any of the Plants vs. Zombies games, and the only images I could find about it were on the wiki page, hence the rarity and, well, price if you can find any listing anywhere for this thing. If you've ever watched Breaking Bad, you'll already know what this one is about. Garden Warfare 2 Heisenberg Easter Egg. This is a sketch of Heisenberg in Breaking Bad. It's gotten to be a pretty big meme since Breaking Bad had its resurgence a few years ago. But if you go to the soccer field in Garden Warfare 2, you'll be able to find a zombie version of the sketch. Just a funny little Easter egg that they decided to throw in there. And I would be a bit worried if any kids understood this one. Project Hot Tub. Project Hot Tub was a name assigned to a cancelled game originally going to be developed by PopCap. Nothing much is known about it except that it was going to be a action-adventure single-player title, and it was apparently going to release for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. This game was cancelled by EA in favor of Project Ragtag's development, which was a codename for a Star Wars game, and that game got cancelled as well. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 3Z Arena. The 3Z Arena was a sort of ride/location in the Carowinds Park in North Carolina. If you've ever been on a ride where you shoot at any cardboard cutouts with red dots with a blaster on your cart, it's basically that, but on a massive screen, where you got to travel to different places in the Plants vs. Zombies universe and shoot plants if you're a zombie, and, well, shoot zombies if you're a plant. Unfortunately, it shut down in July of 2022, but it looked like it was genuinely really well made. Tier 5, The Sewers. Evil Dave. Evil Dave is a character that appears in battle in the Chinese version of Plants vs. Zombies 2. According to his dialogue, he came to ridicule his brother Crazy Dave. The player has to fight Evil Dave's plant army 6 times within a certain amount of time in order to defeat them. Each time the player defeats Evil Dave, they will get bigger and bigger rewards that would outweigh the rewards that you got when going against another player. This guy's pretty weird, but it's weirder that he's only in the Chinese version of the game. China gets an odd amount of exclusive things when it comes to Plants vs. Zombies. Plants vs. Zombies All-Stars. Speaking of Chinese exclusives, Plants vs. Zombies All-Stars was the 3rd game available only to Chinese players. This was another Plants vs. Zombies game, but with a lot of new and weird mechanics, such as a sort of evolution of plants. This list shows who turned into who. And this game also had a different leveling system, with some different worlds as well, like the Kung Fu and Viking world. I'm honestly really jealous that we didn't get this over here in the West. Harvey Flaxcaster. Harvey Flaxcaster is one of the few unseen characters in Plants vs. Zombies. In level 4-5 of PvZ 1, Crazy Dave mentioned Harvey Flaxcaster by telling the player that he and Harvey used to break vases when they were bored. Sometime later, Harvey moved away from the town, explaining why we've never seen him on screen. I really hope he shows up in a future game or comic, because it's crazy that with how few human characters are in this franchise, that not one, but more than one, have no appearance to them. Plants vs. Zombies Social Edition. Chinaman, they just keep getting these exclusives. Plants vs. Zombies Social Edition is the Chinese version of Plants vs. Zombies. It contains new plants, zombies, and some new weird features to the game, such as what looks like a very big town system, and being able to connect with friends in-game. The new plants are pickled pepper, icy fume shroom, fire shroom, flame wood, vine nut, Super Chomper, Future Star, and Calm Chuck. And the new zombies being a Mustache Zombie, Talisman Zombie, and Rabbit Imp. And the trailer for this game has just an amazing, wild version of zombies on your lawn. And there are different zombie variations aside from just the new zombies, like the previously mentioned Encourager Zombie, that's a variant of the Gargantuar, and weirder ones like the Drinking Monk Zombie. After all, there are brand new worlds in this game, and it's just crazy the amount of content they get for Plants vs. Zombies. Imps were scrapped children zombies. This entry is about the imps, or what people think were meant to be children zombies. From what I could find, PopCap hasn't said anything on this, and I doubt these were really meant to be children zombies, but I mean, if every zombie is from a human, I really don't think they are children zombies. I think they just wanted a smaller enemy in the game. But yeah, it's weird that there's a possibility that these could have been originally children zombies. Plants vs. Zombies board game. Plants vs. Zombies the board game was a board game that you would roll dice, which places zombies on players' yards. Players then respond by playing different plant cards to remove those zombies from their board, or by playing different cards making it harder for the other player to manage zombies on their boards. Unfortunately, it was never released to the public, and these 2 images here are the only ones I could find of it. Mainly, I think it's hard to find much information on this game because looking up Plants vs. Zombies board game just pops up the Plants vs. Zombies edition of Risk. But yeah, there's not a whole lot available for this entry. It looks like it would have been a really well-made card game. It looks like it has a lot of thought put into it, but yeah, was never released. Each game series is a different timeline. So in Plants vs. Zombies, there's a lot of plot holes and things that seem like massive deals and are never mentioned again. And a big theory around these is that every game series is in a different timeline, meaning the story of Garden Warfare, mainline Plants vs. Zombies games, and spin-off games, like Adventures, are all in their own different versions of the Plants vs. Zombies universe, which would make a lot more sense than being introduced like 7 new characters in Adventures and then them never being brought up again. I like to think that Plants vs. Zombies 1 and 2 are connected and 3 isn't. I don't know if that's just me not liking 3, but I think the direction with 1 and 2 was going really good and 3 didn't make much sense at all. But yeah, I think it's a really cool theory that all of these games are in their own different timelines. Dog Walker. The Dog Walker is a zombie type found in the beta of Plants vs. Zombies 1 that can be seen while walking a dog. The zombie was scrapped, but then later used in Plants vs. Zombies Heroes, which we got to see these guys in another mainline game, but for some reason it makes sense for Plants vs. Zombies Heroes to have a weird unused zombie type. Brave Dave. Brave Dave, the younger brother of Crazy Dave, was introduced in the social edition of Plants vs. Zombies. He was the mayor of Plant Town and had apparently been eaten by zombies, so Crazy Dave took over for him. Kind of dark for a kid's game, but yeah, not a whole lot is known about him, aside from he looks extremely bulk and he's dead. Plants vs. Zombies Farm. Plants vs. Zombies Farm is a Plants vs. Zombies theme park in Wuxi, China. Based on Plants vs. Zombies 2 mainly, it's centered around agriculture and somewhat looks like a big play area for kids, and also is just a place for a lot of different Plants vs. Zombies themed shows. All the footage I could find was on Douyin, so apologies for not really being able to credit them too well, as I can't tell who the author is, who the maker of the Chinese TikTok is. But yeah, it looks absolutely massive. Tier 6, underground. The zombie invasion has been going on for decades. This entry is because of the almanac entry for the Imitator that reads, "I remember the zombie wars back in '76, says Imitator in a raspy old man's voice. Back then, we didn't have all these fancy pea shooters and jalapenos. All we had was guts and a spoon." So, the war in Plants vs. Zombies has apparently been going on for many years, multiple decades in fact. And I believe it goes back even further, considering the founding of Bloom and Doom, stated in the official guidebook, was in 1968. And if that's true, that also makes the Imitator at least 66 years old. Well, that is if plants get enlisted at 18. Can't really say too much as to how their military works. Crazy Dave speaks Crazy Dave. In the comic Lawnmageddon, it's confirmed that Crazy Dave speaks his own language or dialect, just called Crazy Dave. And in Patrice's entry a few tiers ago, it's also stated that she understands about 84% of Crazy Dave's words. So my assumption is that it's just a very weird dialect, and well, she's not the only person that can't really understand him. Barry Brigade. Barry Brigade was a character being worked on for the Battle for Neighborville game, but never made it in. Instead, it was replaced by the Iceberg lettuce that, well, also didn't make it into the game. We don't know a whole lot about this character, aside from having an early model of it, and take this with a grain of salt because it's just one person's Reddit post, but it was supposed to have lots of bullets and around, a rocket, and a turret ability. Yeah, it just sucks how much content gets cancelled for this franchise, and specifically for Battle for Neighborville fans, it must be really disappointing hearing all this cool stuff about your game and everything being cancelled. Plants vs. Zombies TV Edition. This is a playable version of Plants vs. Zombies 1 for a Chinese Android TV model. It's the same as normal Plants vs. Zombies 1, aside from having different menus and it's Chinese and, well, it's on a TV, so I guess not too similar, is it? Main gameplay wise though, it is just the same game. More Garden Warfare 1 maps were supposed to return and get zombified. More maps from Garden Warfare 1 were apparently supposed to return in Garden Warfare 2 and get zombified versions, like how Garden Center from Garden Warfare 1 got turned into Aqua Center in Garden Warfare 2 and was taken over by zombies. I really wish we got more zombified maps like this because, well, it's a great way to have more maps into the game and not have to do a whole lot of remodeling, and it's really cool seeing the different atmosphere that just one map could have by a few things changed and the skybox changing as well. Tier 7 China. I imagine this tier is called this because if you go into the achievements page of Plants vs. Zombies 1 and scroll all the way down, you can, well, get to China. That, and China is a massive part of most of these entries, having a lot of exclusive content that we never got here in the West. Plants vs. Zombies DS Edition soundtrack plays the wrong notes. I guess I accidentally talked about this in an earlier entry, but yeah, the DS version of Plants vs. Zombies sounds completely different when it comes to music. Here, listen to it for a second.
I'm partially doing it in the key of A minor myself.
I imagine this has something to do with the speakers on the DS maybe not being able to output the same frequencies or whatever. But yeah, weird difference to have between versions. Plants vs. Zombies Lost Betas. There are a lot of different beta versions in Plants vs. Zombies that looked very different to what we got in full release. Heck, the 2004 Insanaquarium 2 build has aliens instead of zombies. Yes, this game was going to be centered around aliens instead of zombies originally, and was going to be a DS sequel to Insanaquarium. Then there's the 2005 Weed Links beta, where this is one of the earliest screenshots of the build that we can date back to 2005, featuring early designs of Cabbage Pult, rendering Cabbage Pult as one of the first official plants ever made for the series. Then we have the 2006 Insanaquarium Deluxe build that shows a very early version of the Choose Your Seeds menu. We also have a GIF of the early lawnmower animation, and some pictures of old plant designs compared to their newer ones. We also have a screenshot of what the game looked like on the full sort of board or screen, I guess you would call it. And it looked pretty similar to what we got, obviously. Art style is a lot different, and it does just look like a Flash game, but you can see it's turning more into Plants vs. Zombies. Then we have the 2007 Lawn of the Dead build that looks near identical to what we got on release, the only real differences being the menus. We also have the 2008 April Fool's Day build, where the developers put in the iconic ice level. And finally, the only playable build from what I could find, the December 2nd, 2008 Bloom and Doom build. Yes, all of these titles were originally going to be the name of the game. This build was a version a few months prior to release that had certain things that didn't quite make it into the game, like the dog walker zombie I mentioned earlier. Crazy Dave's car. Crazy Dave's car has been confirmed to be a Toyota Corolla, as stated by PopCap. His car is also an obtainable item in Plants vs. Zombies Adventures that had the description, Crazy Dave's car has no seatbelts, airbags, or even brakes. It's not even clear that this thing runs on gasoline. What is he putting in the gas tank? So yeah, Crazy Dave drives a Toyota Corolla that may not even run on gas. PvZ U53RDV. So this is a YouTube channel that made a Plants vs. Zombies ARG. This ARG was basically just a cursed version of the original Plants vs. Zombies game. This game had all the zombies having different black voids for eyes, a deformed Crazy Dave that was a floating head with one eye and just two arms, all of the plants crying, and a really weird version of the soundtrack playing in the background. And since it's mostly Spanish, I can't really understand a whole lot of what's happening. Not that I think someone who even knows Spanish could, with how crazy it is. But yeah, it seems to just be a very messed up version of the game, and it even has a really cursed version of zombies on your lawn, with the zombies repeating, "Don't feel safe." In another video, having the plants in the Zen garden burning, yelling for help, and in another, Crazy Dave getting killed by a massive wasp. There's only 4 videos up as of now, and it's an absolute fever dream if you click on it not knowing what you're getting yourself into. But yeah, so far it's just a cursed version of Plants vs. Zombies, and hopefully the creator of this decides to put out some more videos. Thank you guys so much for sticking to the end and hopefully enjoying the series. I'm loving making these types of videos and seeing you guys love them. And I'll have a link in the description where you can vote for what the next Iceberg will be on my free Patreon. Don't worry, you don't have to pay any money to vote there. And I really hope you guys enjoyed. Please like the video and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.